We are recording. Welcome to, this is our affordable materials grants RFP review. So we're going to talk about the grant request for proposals, a couple of things that changed from the last version, and how to get started with them. So it is just me today. Jeff is out for the day, so but we've got both of our contact information here because we're both handling the grant stuff. So you're free to contact either of us if you have questions. But let's get started. I hope everyone is having a good start to the semester. Okay. So what are affordable materials grants? These used to be called textbook transformation grants. We have changed the names and some of the terminology throughout them, as well as some of the structures. So if you have done a previous grant, this may sound a little bit different from what you've seen in the past. But there are two categories. There's transformation grants are opportunities for individuals or teams of faculty. So that's changed. We used to only do teams for transformation grants, or the upper level, the higher level of grants. But we are now allowing individuals if there's no way to put together a team. But there are opportunities for individuals or teams of faculty and professional staff to transform courses that are currently using commercial textbooks into courses using open educational resources and other affordable materials. So the goal is to get your courses to be using no more than $40 worth of materials, but ideally no cost if it's possible. The other category is continuous improvement grants, and these used to be called mini grants. But these are opportunities for individuals or teams, again, to improve previously created OER and the use of those OER. So the continuous improvement grants are for the people who are already using open educational resources and want to make changes, want to make them better, want to add ancillary materials, things like that. How that time is funded varies by institution. So every institution does things differently. I can tell you there are some institutions where professional staff can only receive their portion as travel funding. There are some institutions where they're allowed. So it really depends, and that's something that we're trying to help with clarifying by encouraging conversations with your grants and business offices. So for those coming in just now, we are recording. You've only missed this first slide, but this meeting is being recorded. So if you need to go back and review, you'll be able to. So moving forward, the request for proposals, we do have a link here. You should be able to click on the screen if you want to go to that, but it's also available on our website. If you click on Affordable Materials Grants in the middle of the screen, and then at the very top is the round 18 request for proposals. The deadline for applications this round is October 5th, and then we'll have peer and administrative reviews October 6th through 22nd, and then you'll be notified on October 23rd of whether you are receiving a grant or not. 1 week later, on October 30th, we will have an online kickoff meeting. That kickoff meeting, it is required for transformation grants, the first category. It's required for at least one team member to participate. That will also be recorded, so anyone can go back to it, or if your whole team wanted to attend but couldn't, they'll be able to go back and watch that recording too. But it is required that one person from each team attend the online kickoff and participate. For the continuous improvement grants, though, that kickoff, it's optional, but we highly recommend it because there's a lot of information in there that really benefits everyone on these grants. So let's talk a little bit about transformation grants, and then we'll talk about the continuous improvement grants, and then we'll talk about some things that apply to both. So the funding structure for transformation grants has changed. So we used to award based on the number of students being impacted per year on each grant, but we've changed that because we're seeing a lot of conflict between how much time people are spending on the projects versus the impact. And the important thing for us is that we want these projects to happen, but we want to make sure that we're supporting them happening. So instead of awarding based on how many students are impacted, we're now changing it to be based on the number of people involved on the project. So it's now going to be 5,000 maximum per individual team member, and that maximum is for the salary, the course release, travel, whatever that person is using it for. Their maximum for their individual piece is 5,000. Each project can also add additional project expenses, but they have to be adequately justified. So we want, if you need to purchase materials, or if you need to go to a training or something, you can put that in there in addition to that 5,000 maximum per individual, but you want to make sure that you're justifying it, showing that it really is necessary for that project. The maximum for these transformation grants is up to 30,000 total. So that's the 5,000 plus any additional project expenses. So they can be as small as 5,000 or as big as 30,000. It really just depends on how big the project is and how many team members there are, what's required for that project to be successful. Like I said, if you've got other project costs outside of just personnel, you can incorporate those expenses. We've seen authoring tools, equipment, we've seen travel incorporated into the grants. But again, just make sure that it's very clear in the budget section of what you're asking for, and also explain why they're necessary for the success of the project when you are writing out your plan. So it's very, very important. I keep hitting the arrow key and it's not doing what I want it to. So how could you use transformation grants? There are a lot of ways to incorporate a lot of different types of projects that we see on these grants. So a few examples here. An example of an adoption would be if you are replacing your commercial sociology textbook or your commercial whatever you teach textbook with a textbook that is already out there, an open textbook, already there, already perfectly designed for your course, at least good enough for what you are trying to do. So you're just adopting, and so you might need to adjust your course. You may need to maybe you're previously using Publisher PowerPoints, and so this change in textbook requires you to create new stuff. That's what you're using this grant funding for, is to compensate the time to adjust for that adoption. And so OpenStax, we have an example here. OpenStax is an open publishing company. They create open textbooks. They're a little bit more heavy on the sciences and social sciences right now, but they've got new stuff coming out all the time. We've also got customizations. So maybe there is a textbook out there and it looks great for the most part, but you really just need to customize it to work for your course. You can do that depending on the license on it. But and you'll learn more about that when you get into the kickoff meeting. And you can also go to Creative Commons, and that will tell you a little bit about how the licensing works. But if you wanted to take a textbook that's out there, you want to customize it, make it work perfectly for your course. That's another idea of how these grants might be used. There might also be like a full-on revision needed. Maybe there's a textbook out there. It's got a couple of chapters that work, but really you need to, maybe it's just not good for your teaching style or the methods that you use. So maybe you need to do a full revision of it. And so that's another idea, another type of project that we see. We also see complete new creations. So with maybe you are teaching a course that just doesn't have anything out there, and so you want to get this grant to write a whole new textbook. That's a big project to undertake, but it's been done. And we've seen some really great stuff come out of those projects. There's also, you also don't have to do textbooks at all. If you are realizing that the textbook style, teaching to a textbook is just not working for you, and you want to move to other kinds of materials, maybe you want to use what your library offers, different journal articles, you could go the reading list route with your library, and that would be a good opportunity to partner with a librarian. And you'd be using Galileo library, and then you could also incorporate things that maybe aren't in your library but that are still freely available to your students. And then there are also low-cost materials projects, and so maybe your course is really one that needs to have an interactive or adaptive homework platform. We see it a lot with like college algebra and some of the more foreign languages, things like that. And so maybe you need to have that platform there. And so maybe you're going to, instead of using the expensive packaged one that you've been using, maybe you're going to investigate a couple of lower cost ones that you found, look at them and see if they will work for your course. The important thing with that is just to make sure that whatever you choose to use, it is low cost, $40 or under total for what the students are purchasing. So before we move on, are there any questions about the transformation grants specifically?
Hi, this is Anita McMurtry. I have a question about the kickoff meeting. What date was that again?
The kickoff meeting is October 30th. It is an all-day meeting. I believe it's usually 9 to 3 o'clock. But we take breaks throughout, and we do take a lunch break. But yeah, it's October 30th.
Okay, I'm confused between October 5th and October 30th. The deadline for the application is October 5th, correct?
Yes, the kickoff meeting is for the people who are they're awarded grants, and so we're doing a kickoff to give some training and stuff before people get started on the projects.
Oh, okay. So that wouldn't be for me. I'm trying to. This is my first time, so.
Yeah. So if you're applying, and then you would submit by October 5th. You would be notified on October 23rd, and then if you got the grant, then you would attend the kickoff.
Gotcha. Okay, I got it now. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, if you didn't get the grant and you wanted to attend the kickoff anyway, we're always open to that too. You just let us know so we can send you the information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions before we move on?
Yes, ma'am. This is Sumit from Electrical Engineering. Could you kindly talk about the application process and what we need to do for a successful application?
Yeah, we're gonna get to application process in just a minute because we've combined the application processes into one application form instead of having two different processes now. So once we get through, we're gonna go through the continuous improvement grants real quick, and then we'll be moving to the application process. So we'll go ahead.
Thank you.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and keep moving then. So continuous improvement grants, previously called mini grants. These also have a different guideline for funding. They are 2,000 maximum per team member. And again, that's for the individual piece, salary, course release, travel. You can still do additional project expenses if needed. But again, just make sure they're justified. The maximum on these has been changed. So previously, the maximum was 4,800 on mini grants, and that really limited how many people could really be working on the projects. But we want to allow for bigger teams where it makes sense, and so we've changed it so that the maximum on continuous improvement grants is now 10,000. So you could get a few more people onto the project and work together a little bit more. That also gives room to work with like the UNG Press or another open publishing company, someone that maybe you want to get some peer review done, something like that. It gives you a little bit more funding to work towards that. So these grants, again, can be as small as 2,000 or as big as 10,000, depending on how big the project is, how many team members there are, and what's necessary. Couple of definitions here. So for the purposes of continuous improvement grants, we define a substantial improvement and or adaptation as the major adaptation and or improvement of a resource through updates for accuracy, accessibility, clarity, design, and formatting. That's not a limited list, but these are usually the things that we see. We see people putting in, maybe they're using a textbook that's not accessible and they need to make it accessible. They might apply for a grant to do that. Maybe the design is just really terrible and you want to make it look better. That's another idea for a grant. So we're looking at improvement, and that could also just be content improvements. Maybe the content really needs to be updated. And then ancillary materials are any materials created to support teaching with an existing course using open educational resources. So that could be PowerPoints, it could be quiz banks, it could be supplementary videos, things like that. The important thing is that with both types of grants, anything you produce with the grant funding is going to have to be openly licensed. And that's all explained in the more in depth in the RFP, and it is something that you'll have to check on the application as well. So couple of examples of continuous improvement grants, ancillary materials creation. So maybe there is a really great open textbook, but there aren't any materials available. It doesn't come with lecture slides. And so you want to create the lecture slides, but then you also want to make them accessible, maybe record some videos, and then make all of it publicly available. And so maybe that's the grant that you decide to do. For substantial improvement and or adaptation, an example of that would be maybe you're already using the OER, but it needs a big overhaul. Maybe maybe this course is heavily based on current events, and so you need to make changes in it. That would be another idea for a continuous improvement grant. Okay, priority categories. So these apply to both transformation and continuous improvement grants. And so these priority categories get some priority, so they get a few extra points for fitting a strategic goal of Affordable Learning Georgia. So, but they're not requirements. So if you don't fit one of these categories, don't be discouraged from applying. We still want to see all kinds of projects, even if they don't incorporate these priorities, because you still may have a much stronger application than someone who does fit it. It really depends on the project. So not requirements, but they do give a few extra priority points. So one of them is collaborative projects with professional support. So these are grants that involve at least one person outside of the team of course instructors. And so it might be an instructional designer, it might be a librarian, it might be OER publishers like the UNG Press, it might be instructional technologists, web designers, programmers, maybe you're creating an app or something, or it could be graphic designers. Again, this isn't a limited list, but that's the idea, is to bring in some professional support outside of the course instructors. I see that Helen has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about this category. Now, the all of these instructional designers and librarians, are they only for the priority category, or can they be used with all? I'm kind of confused. Because
so it's category might not be the best word for it, but you can fit any number of the categories, or you might not fit any of them. But if your team does include an instructional designer or a librarian, then just check the box saying that we're a collaborative project, and that it's going to give you a few extra points.
Okay, and that's for either or. Okay, I got it. Yeah. I just got a little confused there. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so another category is student participation in materials creation, adaptation, evaluation. So this is beyond just student participation in the actual course that you're where you're actually teaching to them, because of course they're involved there. But this would be involving them in the actual project, like while you're developing, while you're evaluating materials. And that's because involving students in the creation, remix, edit, evaluation of these resources, that's one way to apply open pedagogy, and it allows you to increase student agency. It gives them the opportunity to really be invested in the course and in their materials. And so it's a good pedagogical practice. So that's why we want to encourage that by creating a priority category here, where you get a few extra points for involving students in it. And so the important thing, though, is that you would want them to be active participants. It wouldn't be the standard like surveying students at the end of a course kind of thing. Another category is departmental scaling projects. And so this was there already before. This was a previous priority category, but we've adjusted just a tiny bit. So in this category, these are courses that are going to implement open, no cost, low cost, whatever you're doing for your project on a department-wide all sections scale. But the important thing that we've clarified on this is that there has to be a commitment from the department to get these priority points. So we want to see it in the letter that you get from your department chair or the office that is sort of managing this, your departmental level. So the potential for departmental scaling, which we see in a lot of grants, and it's great to see those statistics, like the numbers that it could meet, but that isn't a commitment, and so we want that commitment in order to get these points. So when you're calculating your numbers, you want to make sure that you're doing it based on where the actual commitment is, and then if there's a potential, then you would talk about that, and that may also that helps your grant reviewers see a bigger picture anyway. So, yes. Did you have a question? Go ahead, Sumit.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. My question is, what kind of commitment do you need from the department?
So for this priority category, to get these points, we would want to see in your letter of support from your department chair, we would want them to just say something in their letter about the department's commitment to at least piloting on a department-wide all sections scale. And so because we've seen previous projects where they talk about the potential, but then there's really there wasn't any kind of commitment to even try it. And so we've had, I don't know, misunderstandings with previous grants. And so we just want to see that the department chair is willing to try.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. That
Yep.
makes sense.
Okay, so the last priority category is upper level campus collaborations. And this was also on previous rounds. So in order to address the gap in OER and no or low cost resources, and this is for upper level undergraduate and graduate courses. So grad courses are considered that upper level campus collaboration as well. But the idea is that these courses that have smaller enrollment numbers, but still really need this transformation. Maybe they're using really expensive textbooks and you really want to make this happen, but it's hard to get that impact. And so we want to see collaborations across institutions. And so we've had a few past grant projects where they do this. And the one that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, there is a team at University of North Georgia and Kennesaw State University working together to create their GIS, Geographic Information Systems, resources for some of their upper level courses in that program. And that's because neither of the institutions really teaches it often enough to get enough impact to make it an attractive proposal. And so they got together and worked together to make it, turn it into a collaboration and get more, combine their impacts to get something a little bit more attractive in their proposal. And so that's another, that's the last priority category. Again, that's already been there, but we're kind of, as we're adjusting this stuff, we're re-emphasizing that. Collaborations are good. Did you have another question, Sumit?
Yes, ma'am. My question is that does this have to be between institutions or can be between departments? So there can be like a course which also taught in another department, but you want to collaborate and make it better. They have different course numbers.
You can always collaborate within your institution, and that will still create a more attractive proposal. But just for these extra priority points, we're looking for the cross-institution stuff. But again, the collaboration across departments, that's still going to increase your impact. It's still going to make a more attractive proposal. Helen, did you have another question? I'm not sure. I still see your hand up. So, oh, okay. Okay, so and feel free, anyone who as we're moving forward, if you have questions, feel free to do what Sumit and Helen have been doing, raise your hand, or just go ahead and type it into the chat. I don't mind stopping to answer questions as needed. So a little bit more into the funding side. The funding does go to the institution, so it's not sent directly to you from ALG. It goes to the institution, and then the institution is responsible for dispersing based on your budget. And so the idea is to cover the team members' time, project expenses, travel expenses, anything that was in your budget and that works with your institution's policies. The funding process works through a service level agreement that is between ALG and your institution. And the institution invoices us for 50% at the beginning and 50% at the end when you submit your final report. That doesn't mean that you can only use the funding at those 2 times, at least as far as we're concerned. But that's just how ALG sets it up so that we have we have a little bit more incentive to complete projects, is to do half at the beginning and half at the end. Additional guidelines, again, institutions are responsible for funds disbursement. So ALG doesn't handle the salary stuff, the expense reports. That's all up to your institution, and it's all likely going to go through your grants, research, and or business office. And the new application process actually requires you to speak with those people before you apply, and that will kind of help you get that communication started. These budgets are supported by state funds, and so the institutions spending that money do have to comply with state, board of regents, and institutional policies and procedures. So the institutional stuff changes all the time. So they're going to follow their own policies, and then they're also going to follow the state and board of regents policies as well. Okay, so I'm going to change my screen sharing here for a minute and show you let's see. We're going to go through the request for proposals. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just kind of go over some of the basic stuff, and then we'll go over the application process. So let's see, let me get the right stuff up. Okay, do you see the request for proposals?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the Word document. There's we have a website, a page on our website that covers a little bit of this and then gives you the link to the full document. And so I'm sorry, do we have? Oh, I see the chats. Okay. It's I don't see the chat when I'm switched all the time, so I'll be kind of going back and forth to make sure that I'm not missing questions. So to start, we've got a little bit of an explanation of where these grants came from, what they're supposed to do, and so you can read through that. You're going to go through and read the grant categories, and so it'll go a little bit more in depth into what's expected from transformation grants and what's expected from continuous improvement grants, which we've covered. We've covered the most important stuff in the PowerPoint, but you do still want to kind of read through this and make sure that you understand the full scope of the projects. So required activities though, so for the transformation grants, we would go through the service level agreement process with your institution and our system office here. We would do the invoice process where the institution invoices for half at the beginning and half at the end. At least one team member is required to attend that online kickoff meeting that I mentioned before. It's October 30th. And it's required for teams that have been notified that they are being awarded. Each semester, each team will complete a semester status report. Every semester, there are deadlines for each semester. It's usually the last day of, I guess, the average last day of the semester. And that's just a Google form, a short Google form where you go through and just kind of update us. Did any team members change? Did the scope change? Did the plan for teaching it change? Things like that. We just want to see where you're at with the project and how it's going. On the final semester of the project, though, instead of doing a status report, you're going to do a final report. And so that's going to be, you're going to talk about student success impact. You're going to talk about how the project went. You're going to do a little bit of a comparison with DFW rates and your grade averages, just kind of comparing from semester to semester. And we do have a template for the final report, so you'd be able to kind of go through each piece of that template and fill it out. So this is what I was saying before about new materials and them being openly licensed. And so any new materials that you create with grant funding, they have to be created under a Creative Commons attribution license, except when they're based on materials that maybe have a more restrictive open license. So for example, the University of North Georgia Press, their materials are CC by SA, share alike. And so your materials would also have to have that share alike piece to it. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but the important thing is that it does have to have an open license if you created it with grant funding. And they have to be made accessible to the public. And so if you don't have a way to do that at your institution, we can do it for you through our repository. Things like quiz banks are exempt from that as well. You don't have to openly post your quiz banks. This is new. The other thing that's required from new materials being created now is that they're developed with accessibility in mind, and that's because as accessibility is becoming it's always been important, but as it gets more attention, we need to make sure that all of our materials are also accessible. And so we've created tutorials that teams will be able to follow to make sure that they are creating their stuff with accessibility. So you will have that support there as well. There are a couple of other requirements, and the continuous improvement grants are also, they have very similar requirements. They're pretty much the same, except that there are a couple things that you don't have to do for continuous improvement. The application guidelines, let me switch over to the actual application. I think that would work a little bit better for this next piece. Let me change to okay, so this is the transformation grants application form. This is the Word version of it. But when you submit it, you're actually going to be submitting in a Google form. But we want you to draft your whole proposal in this form because you're going to have to submit it when you fill out the actual Google form. We use that as sort of a backup, and we also use your Word version as that's what we store in our repository. And so we need both. We need the Word version, and then we need the Google Form version. But you'll be able to copy and paste things into Google Form, so it shouldn't create too much more time. For transformation grants, you're going to be filling out the applicant or submitter name, submitter information. Sometimes this is the same person, sometimes it's not, depends on your institution. You'll add the additional team members. We have room for 6, but if you have more, there's also going to be a box in the form where you can add their names to the project. We've got the categories where you can explain if you're one of the priorities or multiple of the priorities. You check all that apply. You're going to put the total amount of funding. So for transformation grants, the maximum is $30,000, but you're going to put whatever your total is going to be. You're going to put your final semester. For this round, the final semester is going to be fall 2021. I think for continuous improvement grants, we have an option for summer 2021 as well, because those can be shorter projects, but in general, we're looking at a year for these projects. If you need a different final semester, you can talk to us, and there is a spot in there where you can say, I talked to Jeff and Tiffany, and they approved that we can do this in spring 2022 instead. And so you just got to talk to us and let us know. We do want to know if you're going to use an OpenStax textbook, and that's because we are going to we're going to let OpenStax know so that they can give you a little bit more support with using their materials. Gabriella, fall 2021 is that would be the semester that you're teaching it for the first time. And so the final semester it's when you teach the pilot of the course, and so we want you to teach it first before you submit your final report, and that's because we want to see the student response to it, and we want to see the student success numbers and all that good stuff. So let me go back to where I was. There it is. I'm looking at the wrong application before. Okay. So impact data. So in this section, we have sort of expanded it a good bit, and that's because we've seen some math issues on previous applications. But in this table, you're gonna fill it out for each individual course. And so you're gonna have a separate table for one course. You're gonna have a separate table for the next course. And that's because the tables, the impact data can get a little jumbled when we're trying to put all different numbers into one number together. And so instead we've decided to kind of expand it out, and then we'll calculate the numbers based on what exactly we're looking for. So you'll fill those out. And when we say course one, if it's multiple people teaching the same course but in different ways, we consider those separate. We consider them different courses, especially if you were previously using a different textbook that costs a different amount of money, and so you want to sort of separate that out. So there's several pages of this, and that's because we've given you room for up to 4 courses. But you'll have room. There will be a box where you can put more information if you have more than 4 courses. There will be an area where you can explain your project goals, and so you're going to write a little bit of a narrative there. The statement of transformation, that's going to be like why you want to make this, why this project needs to happen, how it's going to affect your institution, your department, how it's going to affect the students, and you might do a little bit of research and include sort of any relevant scholarly literature as needed. Then you're going to have an action plan, and that's where you're going to tell us exactly what you want to do. And so that could be sort of like a timeline. Nancy, if you teach multiple sections of the same course and they're taught the same way with the same textbook and everything, you would count that as one course. But you would include the numbers for all sections, and that part that'll show up in the table where you can put how many sections of it you teach each year and each semester. Does that answer your question?
Yes. If you're teaching a section that's an honors and the other ones are not honor sections, do you differentiate that in the list?
If they have different textbooks, I would, but if they have the same textbook, the same like amount of course materials, you're probably fine to put them together. I would just kind of use your best judgment on that. So then you'll talk about your plan for quantitative and qualitative measures. And so that's going to be what kind of surveys you plan on doing, what specifically you want to know from students about it. if you're going to need IRB approval, you want to explain that here so that the grants office or whoever you're working with is aware that you're going to be doing this, but also so that the reviewers can see, oh, so these surveys they're going to do, they're going to get IRB, and that all of that is important. So that's where you'll explain that. And these don't have to be super extensive, but the more detailed and the more I guess thought out, the better the reviewers are going to respond to it. You're going to talk about your timeline, and so that can be, you can kind of refer to your plan and set up an actual timeline for it here. You're going to talk about your budget, put in your plan for budget, and then explain as needed. Sustainability plan, that's really important for the reviewers. They want to see that you have a plan to maintain this project after the grant is over. And so, you might talk about how this semester is reviewed, the course is reviewed every semester before teaching. We'll update links as needed, things like that. Maybe plans for expansion in the future. Just kind of talk about what you're thinking as far as sustainability goes. In the actual application, in the Google application, you're going to be asked to check a box that says that you understand that new materials have to be Creative Commons licensed, and then another one that says that new materials have to be accessible. You're going to get a letter of support from the department chair or their direct report, such as like the dean or provost, if that department chair is part of the project. So if your department chair is in your project, like written into your project, then your supporting letter should come from whoever's above them. But in general, it's going to come from your department chair. And so we want to look, at the base level, we want to see them sort of just support for funds disbursement, support for actually doing this project. So if we want to know that they're okay with you doing this project, and then kind of just acknowledge the sustainability of use. So maybe something about how the department works, if your department requires a certain textbook for all courses or not, will that person be able to continue teaching their course with the affordable materials beyond the grant, something like that. And then if this project is looking at a scale up, then we're also looking for that in this letter of support as well, that support for departmental impact, doing it across all sections. And so that's going to be that letter you can upload into the the Google application. That's going to be it could be a Word document or a PDF, whatever makes sense. Then you're also going to get a letter of acknowledgement. So this isn't it's not an approval letter. It's just a letter saying that you met with your grants or business office, whatever is going to handle the funding part of your grant. We want you to meet with them before you apply so that they know you're applying and so that they can help you with your institution's policies on anything related to the grant. And so all we're really looking for here is like a sentence and a signature saying, hey, I met with this project. We have discussed it, signed, whoever. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a sentence or two saying that they have seen the project and you guys have discussed it. And so that is the transformation application form. I'm going to switch over here. The continuous improvement one isn't much different. That's this one. Nope, that's the wrong one. Hang on just a second. Too many things open on my desktop. Okay, so this is the continuous improvement one is a little bit less involved. So we have, you're still gonna give the same information about the applicant, team members. You're still gonna give the basic application information. So your, what the courses that you're doing, the materials you're currently using, things like that, any, oh, I just realized the priority categories aren't in here. I'll have to fix that, but the priority category should be here as well. You'll also give project goals, but see the difference, the main difference between these two types of projects is that your transformation grants are looking for in-depth data on like how many students are going to be impacted, how much money are they going to save, all those numbers. We don't necessarily need that for continuous improvement because it's not new savings with these projects. These courses have already been using OER. They're just improvement of that. And so we don't need those numbers again. But you're gonna have the same kind of, all the same categories that you need to fill out. Still need a letter of support, and you still need the letter of acknowledgement as well. And so I'm going to hang on just a second. Okay, let me go back to our PowerPoint. How are we doing? Any questions? Sumit and Nancy, I see your hands are up again.
Yes, ma'am. I just got one question. Is where can I get this application form? What is the location where these are available?
It is on, if you go to our website, affordablegeorgia.org, you can find it. There's there's a button in the middle of the website that says affordable learning or affordable materials grants. And then there's a link at the top there, but I will also put that link in the chat here. Let me put the link right here for you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, so we have, we've talked about the RFP, we've talked about the applications, the rubrics. We've got a few more minutes left. We've only got a couple slides left. So for the peer review, after you've submitted your application, we do have rubrics for both types of grants, and they are also linked on the RFP page. So you'll be able to look at these a little bit more in depth. But it is going to be peer review. It's going to be 3 reviewers with a weighted rubric. And it's the same, different rubric for each type, but the same reviewers will be working on these rubrics. We've actually got our call for reviewers out right now too. So that is what I have for you. We've got a few more minutes if anyone wants to ask questions. But if not, thank you for joining. Yes, go ahead, Nancy. You're muted. Not sure if you're.
Sorry about that.
Oh, go ahead.
I might have already answered this. The PowerPoint presentation that you're using right now, will it be available?
We can make it available.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Are you going to put it in the chat as well?
Yeah, I can do that real quick.
Thank you.
open that up while I'm doing that, if anyone's got other questions. Where you can, so the video recording, I'll have to let it process. I'll have to let it process, and then we will, we'll send out a link, but we'll also have it linked on the RFP page. So on that round 18 request for proposals page that's linked in the chat, we will have the video linked there as well. Let's see, grants. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask them while I'm looking for this. All right. There is there's the PowerPoint for you, but the PowerPoint will also be linked with the video on the RFP page. Do you have any other questions? Let's see, if we have a project which needs to be discussed before submission, yes, absolutely. Please feel free to call us or email us. Right now we're all working from home, so email is probably the better route, but we respond to email really quickly, so feel free. It will not let me download. Oh.
Yeah, I can't download it either.
Okay, I'll get the PowerPoint will also be linked with the video on the RFP page, and you'll be able to download it from there. But if you once it's up, I would probably like search for it maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
And if it's not letting you download it there, please let us know and we'll figure out what's going on with it. Okay. See, I shared a copy of it, but it may just it may be doing something weird with Teams. So yeah, we'll try the website and yeah, but you'll be able to access from there. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.